guess I just... Welcome, Wapham crew. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, November 7th, Monday, November 8th for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. We are live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight, and I'm your host, TessaTNT. I hope you had an awesome weekend so far, and thank you so much once again for joining us on, right now, if you're listening live, Spreaker.com under We Are Paradox Media. You can also find us live on KPNL Radio, which you can find at kpnlradio-db.com. If you'd like to follow us on your free time, feel free to follow us on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, and Podcast Chaser. Make sure you follow and like us and tickle that little bell on YouTube. That way, anytime we have a new episode up and going for you, you'll get notified. Follow and like us on Facebook and Twitter as well. So tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, we will be talking to and getting to know author and paranormal investigator Keith Evans. Keith has a bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Central Florida. He is a retired Army reservist and a retired forensic scientist. He uses scientific methods during his paranormal investigations. He researches the history of the owners, managers, and key players of each Victorian house and Victorian inn that he investigates. This research helps him place a name with any ghost or spirit who may wish to communicate. Keith used to just obtain verbal permission to conduct paranormal investigations, but his first 4 books were placed on hold due to not having written permission. He now requires a consent agreement form signed by each owner of the property before he conducts any paranormal investigations. His books are documentary works of research concerning the unexplained activity, a documentation of a small town family and business history, and the individuals that stay behind after death to continue to look after their beloved historical homes and businesses. Keith also works alone, usually during the daylight hours, and he uses technological equipment to monitor and document any evidence that he finds. Keith uses the Ovilus 4 and the Mel meter. The Ovilus 4 allows the spirits to use their energy to choose words from the Ovilus's database. The Melmeter measures temperature and electrical fields. A cold spot may indicate the presence of a spirit. A spike in the electrical fields may indicate the presence of a spirit as well. Keith also takes pictures and videos of all the paranormal investigations. Ghosts or spirits are people too. Keith always tries to show respect to each ghost and spirit that he meets and tries to treat all living beings, ghosts, and spirits with respect as well. To fear a ghost or spirit is just not to know a ghost or spirit. And he says here, the Hayes House ghosts are people too. Welcome, Keith, and thanks so much for coming to hang out with us on the airwaves tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So how did you first get into the paranormal field?
Well, as a child, I noticed when I was about 4 years old that I was sensing things that no one else seemed to understand. I had a relative that had an older house, and I used to always look at the decorative wood in her house, and I'd tell her that wood was really beautiful. And my parents were a little worried about me liking wood at age 4. And it was almost like I could feel the happiness and the pride that parts of the house had brought the former owners. And that's how I first got into paranormal. I knew there was something else going on, and I knew that I was able to pick up on that and that most people weren't able to. But up until 2012, I just used mainly talking and just listening. And I didn't start using technological equipment like the thermal imagers and millimeters and Ovilus 5 and 4. I didn't use those until about 2012.
That's funny. That's when I basically came out of the paranormal closet and didn't really care about the judgment and ridicule of working in the paranormal field or whatnot anymore. And it feels like a lot of people kind of came out at the same time. So you use a scientific method when you're doing this, and I agree with you. Like, I didn't purchase any of my first tools until 2012, and I would just talk, listen, and wait to see what would pop up. What do you think your best evidence that you have captured might have been before you started using different tools?
Well, I would say probably the way I felt. It seemed like any old dilapidated farmhouse that was kind of left abandoned. Where I lived at, a lot of times farmers had to farm more acres to make a living. And a lot of the small farms that were like 80 to 100 acres, they were kind of combined into maybe 3 or 4 of the 80 to 100 acre farms. One farmer would farm all 4 or 3 farms to try to make a living. And they just couldn't afford the upkeep on the homes. And a lot of people didn't really need a home with 2 stories and all that space. So a lot of the old farmhouses were just let go. Nobody took care of them, and the roofs would become compromised. And as I was riding by, I always felt so sorry. Like I felt the sadness that the owners had, because I felt, well, somebody actually was very proud of this house, and they were proud to, they were a business owner, a farmer, and they were very proud. And now the house just, being allowed to more or less fall down and go back to nature. Once the roof is compromised, you're going to have water damage, you're going to have termites, and that's going to be it. And I felt that type of sadness. And I was always asking my parents if they could stop by these old farmhouses so I could get out and just explore. I wanted to see why I was so interested in that old farmhouse. And it was like when my parents would stop and allow me to get out, I would kind of stand there with at least one hand kind of out, like I was feeling the thoughts and the feelings of the, deceased prior owners who had lived there. And it was almost like they were asking me to purchase the place and fix it up so it would not just be lost to time. And it was like I was thinking to myself, I'm a little kid. I can't borrow money to buy a, older farmhouse. And a lot of these older farmhouses were, Victorian style homes built probably between the 1880s up until the 1920s. So they were beautiful old homes, but I I felt like there had to be something going on. There was like someone was reaching out to me and noticing that I was receptive as I would ride by in the car. And a lot of times we took the same roads to go to the grocery store each week or every 2 weeks. And, so it was like it was a routine of driving the same road and going by the same old farmhouses. So I had a lot of time to go by and look and think. And I think the ghosts of spirits look and think at people that go by and say, you know, I think the ghosts of spirits can tell that a person has empathic abilities, and I think they reach out to them, hoping that someday, I might be able to afford to buy the old farmhouse and save it before, it's too late to save it at all. So that's how I first got into paranormal research, and it's nothing that you can really present to someone else. Like, I like presenting data. Like if I say, all right, there's no electrical current around and I'm getting millimeter readings. So, that shows that there's something unexplained going on. I like that. If I just use my empathic abilities, which aren't that strong, I don't have, any data or evidence to show a person that I'm getting this, and this is unexplained. And then it's
Yeah.
up to that person if they want to, you know, they can use their own judgment on whether they think it's paranormal or, some type of alien technology that's remote control or whatever they draw the conclusions to be. But I at least like to have the data from both, my empathic abilities, which I feel are pretty minor compared to some people. And at the same time, I like to have the equipment. The thermal imager is another thing. If you can pick up something that's unexplained, like whether it's hotter or colder than the ambient room temperature, that's definitely unexplained. And I wish more people were into understanding that because I think that gives you a indication of paranormal activity. And ghosts and spirits are electromagnetic energy, and if a ghost is needing energy to move something or to manipulate a millimeter or to choose a word from obelisk 5b, then you might see a very small cold spot for a couple of seconds because that ghost or spirit is drawing heat from the environment so that they have energy enough to, manipulate whatever piece of equipment they're trying to manipulate. So if you have your thermal imager, you'll pick up a cold spot. And I really feel that ghosts of spirits, if there's enough of them around and if they're utilizing their energy, they might actually be warmer than the ambient temperature. Which, like, if you're in the middle of Wisconsin in the wintertime and the outdoor temperature is, below 32 degrees, you might actually pick up some warm areas because there might be enough ghosts and spirits in one area, and if enough of them congregate, say like people will go to like a football game or a baseball game or a concert. How do we know that ghosts and spirits don't congregate in one group for whatever reason? And if they do, and they're all using their electromagnetic energy, you might just pick that up with your thermal imager.
Yeah, it's amazing the things you can. A lot of times it'll just be a face, or you'll see a body outline. Sometimes they're really featured, like you could really pick out different details, and sometimes it's more of, like you said, a mass of cold or hot. And I think it does have a lot to do with where are they drawing this energy from, that relates to their whole temperature thing going on.
Well, when I was at the Hayes house doing my paranormal research for the book, I was working in the first floor back stairway room,
And is
and
this
I
in
was
Florida
talking to the
too?
ghosts and spirits about the fact that I thought the stairwell might have been rearranged differently than what it was during the time period that I was doing the paranormal research, which was around what 2016, 2015, in that period of time.
Is the Hay
And
House located in Florida as well?
yes, Apalachicola, Florida. And I had the thermal imager pointed towards the stairwell, and I didn't see it when it was happening, but later on when I looked at the picture, it looked like a ghost or spirit had one leg over the railing of the stairs, as if to say, you're saying that the stairwell went down this way. And that was the direction that I felt that the stairwell may have went at one time. And you had to look really close because the room wasn't well lit, even though it was daylight. It was during the day, but I didn't have any extra lights or anything on. And but you could see I had at least two or three pictures in that one area, and the only air out of the there was only one picture out of the three that had a like a almost looked like a man standing there. You could only see one leg. He had one leg like over the railing of the stairwell, and that was the back stairway going from the second floor down to the first floor uh, in the back stairway, first floor room. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, most of those pictures were lost during Hurricane Michael in October of 2018. So I had a lot of evidence from the Hayes house, video footage. I had two or three video cameras at the time, so I would have video footage going on of different locations in the same room. And that way, I can't be looking in all places at one time, especially if I'm looking at the obelisk and the millimeter. So by having two or three cameras, you might catch something that you failed to see when it actually happened. And usually, if ghosts or spirits do something, they don't pick up a refrigerator and throw it across the floor. They do something that's so minute that you might not see it. One time, it was in Apalachicola, but it wasn't at the Hayes house. I had a ghost actually move an ashtray, and the ashtray was kind of like oblong, but I could actually see it, you know, spin about a quarter of a turn, and that was so cool that the ghost was letting me know that in this case that he was there.
So I'm not familiar with the Hayes House. Could you tell us a little bit of the story behind this place? Like, what drew you to this particular house?
Well, I had completed paranormal research in Apalachicola, and I had um, received good paranormal activity in a location where the Buck and Hayes family had been employed. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm getting good paranormal research where they worked, then I might get really good paranormal research in a place where both families lived. And the Bucks actually built the Hayes, well, I guess they called it the Buck House at the time, but they built it in 1908. And then Jeff Buck passed away in 1921, and his wife gave the house back to the bank. And the bank sold it to the Hayes family in about 1945. Well, actually 42, the beginning of World War II, or at least the U.S. involvement in World War II. So the Hayes family, stayed there until 1996, and um, Kathleen Hayes was the last Hayes family member to live there. So she had spent about 52 years there from 1942 until 1996, and then she went into a assisted care facility in Tallahassee, Florida. But that's what drew me to the house, was just putting two and two together. The fact that I was getting good paranormal activity where both the Buck family and the Hayes family had worked in Apalachicola. So I figured if I go to the house that both families had lived in at one time, I should get paranormal activity there. But it was kind of like a cat and mouse game trying to be in Apalachicola to talk to the owner when she was in town. The owner is an artist, and she does paintings, and she owned the Hayes house, and it was kind of like a combination Airbnb, and she rented out space for artists to come and paint, to have a quiet place to paint away from home. And it was very hard to catch the owner there, but one day I knocked on the door, and the owner came to the door, and I told her who I was and that I wanted to do paranormal research there. And I told her that I would need her to sign a consent agreement form giving me permission. And then she just smiled. And I knew when she smiled, it was going to be yes, because I go to so many different old Victorian homes and old businesses. And when I ask the person, they just get a horrible, worried look on their face. And then I know the answer is going to be no, even though sometimes they don't say no, but they just never say yes. But when she smiled, I knew right then the answer was going to be yes. So,
So as she was living there, did she herself have any sort of paranormal activity?
well, she actually lived in Atlanta, but she stayed there on occasions. But to the best of my knowledge, no, no one in her family had had any paranormal activity. And the Hayes and the Buck family were very nice people. And I don't think they would ever let themselves be known unless it was someone like me who would not be frightened by it. Even though I have received text messages from people, after after the book was published, and different ones over the years would say that they had stayed at the Hayes house, when it was a Airbnb, and they would say that they could tell that they weren't alone. So that's
That's
that's the only people, but not anyone who had actually owned it that I know of.
yeah. It kind of makes me wonder, like, are these people still going through their everyday activities? Like the fellas would go off to work and the lady would stay about the house and, do her chores or whatnot. Makes me wonder if it's more active at the workplace at certain times during the day and then more active at the homestead.
I don't know. I just remember after Hurricane Michael, I had an opportunity to live on the third floor apartment at the Hayes house. And when I was there, I noticed that the front door would open itself up. And everyone that I talked to said that they had locked it the night before. And so somehow, and I was actually in the living room when the door would open. I would hear it open and I would get right up and there'd be no one there. So, you know, different people say, well, it could be a, older door and somehow it's not catching or somehow the wind blows it open, which it's a possibility. But I actually felt like it was Kathleen Hayes going in and out. And I don't think prior to people having air conditioning, I have a feeling that Kathleen probably left the door and windows open a lot. I know when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, during the summer, we would leave the windows open. So I just think it was Kathleen wanting to let fresh air in and was opening up the door. At least that's the way I felt. But if Kathleen did anything, it was always something that wouldn't alarm anyone. They would always think, well, it was the wind or it's an old door and it's not latching properly. But, and when I was living at the Hayes house after Hurricane Michael, which was I was there from like late October 2018 until about the end of February of 2019. So it was about maybe 4 months, a little over 4 months. I was in the second floor front stairway, and the door to Sunshine's room opened up. And I hadn't tried the door at all to see if it was, shut tight or anything. So I have no idea. Maybe it was the vibration of me walking causing it to open up, even though it seemed like I was standing still when it opened up. But, I don't know why I had stopped. I had stopped and looked at the door, uh, and it just opened. And it didn't open up all the way, but it opened up as if Sunshine was opening the door for me. But Sunshine actually passed away in that bedroom, which would be the front of the um, house
Was
on
that their
the
daughter, or who is Sunshine?
southwest side. Sunshine Gibson was the aunt to Pat and Kathleen. Well, to Pat Hayes. And Pat was married to Kathleen, and Pat's mother, Annie, was Sunshine's sister. So uh, there were like five people that was living at the Hayes house up until 1960. One was a lady named Mary. She was a friend of the family's, and she passed away in 1960. Uh, and of course, Sunshine uh, was Annie's sister and Pat Hayes's aunt, and she passed away in 1956. But she was the only one that I know of that passed away at the house for sure. But I was told that when Jeff Buck, the owner who built the Hayes house in 1908, I was told when he passed away in 1921, at that point in time, most people passed away at home, but I don't know if any of his relatives actually remember whether he was at home or whether he was in the hospital. But so that is still up in the air. But for sure, I know that Sunshine Gibson did pass away in her room in 1956.
So did she die from natural causes? Did she get sick and die that way? Are you when you try to find
We had,
information like this, like do you go to a historical society? Like how do you find this stuff out for sure?
I mainly talked to, uh, well, actually, I talked to the two family members who are still alive. When I said that there was five people, I stand corrected. There was actually seven because Pat and Kathleen had two daughters that are still alive. So I always think of people as past tense, ghosts of spirits who had lived at the Hayes house. But Pat and Kathleen still have two daughters that are alive, and they lived at the Hayes house during this period of time. So they were a wealth of information, and I also go to the library and I try to look at the old newspapers, but it's very time consuming and it's hit or miss. Up until World War II, they put a lot of gossip in the newspaper. During that period of time, travel people didn't travel that much because the roads weren't that good. And if anyone went in or out of town, it was either by railroad or by boat. And they would put a lot of information in about who, visited from out of town, who, people would come from out of town to visit friends and family. And the same way when someone went out of town. So, but for the most part, that was prior to World War II. And after World War II, you mainly got just news about international type news about the war.
So we're talking about Sunshine and the way she passed. So was that natural? Her passing there?
No, she had cancer. I thought I'd
Oh
said.
no.
Guess I didn't. Yeah, she died of cancer in 1956. I don't think there was much they could do for cancer back then.
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff, and we're still dealing with it. Um,
Yes.
so were there any like sort of servants or anything that lived there as well, or was it all basically family members?
It was basically family members. I think when the house was built in 1908, I don't know whether Jeff Buck had any servants or not. The house was kind of built, with a front stairway and a back stairway. And usually, when houses are built that way, I've been told it was because the servants would stay in in the back of the house so they wouldn't be seen to that point. So, but I don't know um, if the Buck family financially could afford to have any type of servants helping them. I might be wrong, but um, and I think Florida had a housing depression where property lost its value, and that's one of the reasons why Jeff Buck gave Well, he passed away, but his family had given the house back to the bank. And apparently, uh, the housing depression hit maybe 10 years or so before the Great Depression, which was around the 1930s, which, was all over the world. So apparently it hit Florida first, where property values were really went very low. And I think that Jeff Buck had probably borrowed against his house's value, and because he had a business, Jeff Buck he was into turpentine. He would milk the turpentine from the pine trees, and then he had a turpentine distillery where he would heat the turpentine and turn it into like a oil or paste, so it could be used by other manufacturers to make such things as glue or paste or certain types of paint. So that's what he did. And I think he was always borrowing money to either lease or rent a property where he could have more trees that had not been milked for their turpentine oil, and that would bring the most money if the tree had never been milked for its you know turpentine, which is mainly just the, I guess you could say, the blood of the tree or the sap of the tree.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I have not seen turpentine in years. When I used to live at my granny's house, she had turpentine, and I remember if we'd get chiggers or have a tick or whatever, she'd dab some turpentine on there to get them out, and it's the most astringent smelling stuff. And I never even thought about where did it come from. But that's pretty interesting. I never knew it came from pine trees. And it makes you wonder, do
Well,
people still use it?
well, I think most of the trees that they actually drained them from, I think it eventually kills the tree once you drain, if you drain too much of the sap. And I was told that, um, if I remember correctly, there's like short needle pines and long needle pines. And I'm pretty sure the long needle pines had the best, you know, production of the sap that, they would get more from that tree. And of course, that would give them more money when they would sell to, the different companies that purchased you know, uh, the sap from those trees. So I'm not sure, but I think over the years they've come up with synthetic polymers that replaced, and I think they've also been able to use petroleum products that replace the need for the turpentine.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how far we've come, and just the different things that they used to use back in the day that are no longer used for different reasons. Like you said, it could kill off the trees or whatnot if you milked them too much. I don't think I would like being in that business. I wonder how he felt about it.
Well, I remember one paranormal session. I think I was in the den. The den was like Pat's room. And I had asked Pat, I might be wrong. I may have been in the dining room, but I was asking Pat what he thought about the Great Depression. And he said anger. Now, of course, I'm not sure. I would imagine that Pat's family was also in the turpentine business, just like Jeff Buck's family was. So I would imagine that it hurt both families, you know, during the housing depression and the Great Depression. And I think, turpentine was either replaced by new modern products or by just the overusage of the trees to the point that they weren't given enough sap, to actually make enough money to run a business. But I do remember that if you ask the ghost or spirit about a question where it's emotion involved, they seem to always remember the emotion that they had. So I got the word anger when I asked Pat about the Great Depression. And, but I always found that it seems to me when a person passes away, all they are electromagnetic energy. That's like our soul. And we no longer have the biological brain to store information on like details. So somehow I feel that electromagnetic being, like a person that has passed away, they may not remember all the details. If you asked them, well, what was your favorite car and what year was it built? You might not get no answers. But if you can get on something that was strong emotional response, somehow it seems like a person who's passed away still retains that within their ability to recall memory. And I think that's the reason why most ghosts and spirits, when they respond to you, they'll tell you what's going on in your life. You know, um, more so than answering than the ghost or spirit responding to the questions that you asked. So they're letting you know that you're there. If anything, I found that ghosts and spirits will, tell me something about myself. I remember one time in the Hayes house, I was doing paranormal research in the first floor um, front stairway, and I had bought a new shirt. And most of the shirts that I were wearing were like faded out because I won't throw anything away. I'll just wear it until it gets holes in it, and then
Yeah.
I'll throw it away. And I had bought a new shirt, and I got something like one of the words on the obelisk 5 was like faded, and then I think it was like a bright blue shirt, and then I got um, bright or something, and then shirt. And it just let me know that it was either Kathleen or maybe Sunshine was saying that they noticed that I had a nice new shirt and I wasn't wearing the faded shirt or, one of my faded shirts that, as in comparison. So a lot of times ghosts and spirits will use the obelisk just to point that out to you.
Yeah, and it lets you know also this is not a residual haunting, these are actually intelligent.
Yes. Now, when I was staying at the Hayes house after Hurricane Michael, um, even though I have hearing loss from the Army, um, if someone is stomping on the steps, I can feel that vibration. And I can feel vibration will wake me up quicker than hearing the sound itself. And I would hear, like someone coming up the uh, front stairway, and you'd hear it, and it'd be like 4 or 5 stumps, as if they were almost up to the top, and then it would stop. And I heard that probably of the 4.5 months that I was there, I probably heard it about maybe 4 or 5 times. And most of the time it was before I had went to sleep. So I would say it was probably somewhere between 10 p.m. to maybe midnight. And to the best of my knowledge, I had a neighbor that was living on the second floor, and he got up early to go to work. So he was usually, in bed and asleep. So I have a feeling that that could have been residual energy because I know that the Buck family and the Hayes family, the ghosts that were there were so, you know, they wouldn't do anything to wake somebody up or disturb anyone. So if they were going to move around, you wouldn't even hear them moving around. And I always felt that it may have been residual energy from the time where there was a house at that location or a building at that location before the Hayes house was built in 1908. There was a fire in downtown, or what I call downtown Apalachicola, and it burnt just about all the wooden structures down. And I think it was either 1900 or 1903. So I have a feeling whatever structure was there at the location where the Hayes house was built in 1908, that structure was burned down. So I might have heard residual energy from the building, which it could have been a commercial building. I don't know, because it's like in the heart of the downtown of a small town of Apalachicola. It could have been a commercial building, or it could have been you know, a, um, a private house. So the bottom line is, hearing the steps. I had actually asked one of the surviving family members about the stomping. Did they know of anything where someone might have ran up the steps? And they pointed out to me and showed me. You could see, uh, if you look at the steps, that the way the hardwood floor was stained, that Kathleen had put uh, like carpet padding on the center of the steps where you walk. It didn't go all the way across. It just went down the center of the steps. And I was told by one of her daughters that no matter how hard you jumped up and down, you couldn't hear anyone going up and down the steps. So, and apparently that was like that from the time uh, that her daughter, Pat, and Kathleen's daughter could remember. So she didn't think that that would have been residual energy from the time that the Hayes family lived there. It was either from the Buck family or maybe, residual energy from the house that was there prior to the 1900 fire.
So while you were there, did you get any sort of like FLIR evidence?
Yes. Besides the dark area where the gentleman was putting his foot over the stairwell, and that was in the back stairway room on the first floor, I got thermal imaging in Pat and Kathleen's room. And that was before I actually knew that that room was used as a bedroom by Pat and Kathleen. Um, when after I got permission from the owner actually put the place up for sale, and I felt the urgent need to try to get all my paranormal research done as soon as possible, just in case someone bought it and wouldn't grant me continued permission. So when I did the room that was actually Pat and Kathleen's room, I didn't know how the Hayes family had used that room. And when I went in with my thermal imager, I put it towards the corner of the uh, southeast corner of the room. And when I did, I noticed within that corner, it was like a cold line from the on the wall from the floor up to the ceiling. And I thought, well, maybe there's a cold water pipe behind there, and maybe someone on the third floor is taking a shower and they're running cold water or something. And then I'd asked the owner about that, and they told me that there was no pipe in that area whatsoever for drainage of anything. So it couldn't have been that. And I during that period of time, I quickly turned around and compared that to the corner corner of the wall directly perpendicular. And when I did, that was the wall towards the southwest corner. When I did, I could see between two to three kind of like undulating um, colder areas. I won't say dark blue, but I would say um, definitely blue. And the ambient temperature of the room, the AC was not on and it was warm. And I would say the ambient temperature of the room would put most things kind of like pinkish, a pinkish color. So I could see an undulating, like an upper sternum and a head, kind of like a silhouette, like the type of silhouette you would shoot at in the army. And it would kind of go from like a 2 to 3 type silhouette. And I figured that was Kathleen, Sunshine, and Annie. And I didn't see anything from top to bottom in the corner. So then I turned around and I looked back at the uh, northeast corner, and I could see just like someone had drawn a dark blue line in the, corner from the floor up to the ceiling. And I think that was Pat Hayes because Pat he was tall. He was 6'3", but he had like a 28-inch waist. So he was kind of tall and slim, and
Like a string bean.
yes, yes, that's what I thought because I'm like 5'8", and I have like a 38-inch waist, and I'm kind of built like a fire plug. I kind of envied the man because I wish I could have only been that tall and that skinny. But anyway, I really did not want me there because, and I think I was thinking negatively and probably not in the proper way. And I I had forgotten all about that until the book, when I was actually typing that chapter in. And but I think somehow the ghosts of spirits, meaning Pat, Kathleen, Sunshine, and Annie, kind of helped me to forget because I thought like I'm doing the book to kind of like honor the ghosts and spirits, but if they don't want me there, should I continue to write the book? And then somehow I forgot all about the situation where I felt like I was being ganged up on, which later on, I think what they were doing was like a welcoming party. You know how, like, if you come to someone's house for Christmas, people will greet you at the door. And I think it was their way of greeting me and trying to welcome me. And I think the fact that I took it the wrong way, which most people tend to take paranormal experiences the wrong way or in a negative way or think that they're being threatened by it. And I think they helped me to forget about it so I would continue on. And I think they done that because they wanted me to write the book. And they just realized that I had misinterpreted their response to me being in their, bedroom.
Yeah, get out of here, boy. This is our private area. Well, on that note, Keith, we do have to go to our first music break. And on this break, we have King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria, with Fantastic, as well as Ala Imo Eldarella. And then we also have Hosni Bronx, who is originally from Jamaica, but he also spends a lot of his times in the Bronx of New York. And he actually has some original members from Bob Marley and the Wailers in his band as well, and he'll be singing Dance as a Lion. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
We swap on
She like my water bam bam. King Cinnamon. Oh shit, baddest. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Shake your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Gucci brother, baby, gather something. Come on closer, baby, gather 19. I know you better, but I am the king. Your backside bigger than Bombay. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you wind your broncotum. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you wind your broncotum. Jamaica, Ghana, shout out to the ladies in Asia, Nigeria, South Africa. Say me love you. Please me, baby. Yeah. Turn up from you. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Give me love. Me want you, me love you. Give me love. Oh, give me love. Hey, please me, baby. Oh. Yeah, turn up from you. Yeah, take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Shake your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. King Cinnamon. You know what I'm saying?
We swap on the mix. Lift it all.
chant the word people in love. People in love. People in love. People in love. Yeah. Humanity want to protect humanity. We have to save people from poverty. We don't want your frustration. We don't want your ambush Babylon.
We swap on the beat.
Ka anyị kelee Chineke makwa n'ala Imo bụ ndị njem ọnụ. Ka anyị kelee onye nwe ụwa ịmakwa n'ala Imo bụ ndị njem ọnụ. Imo, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo steeti, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo steeti, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo. Democracy emeriela, ndị Imo emeriela, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo steeti, ala Imo ekerelo, ala Imo, ala Imo ekerelo. Democracy emeriela, ndị Imo emeriela, emeka mara mma, ebere mara mma, ọbọnọ mara mma, First Lady mara mma, emeka ịdị ọha mma, emeka ịdị ọha mma, omenka hụrụ anya n'ịdị ọha mma, omenka hụrụ anya wa, emeka na-egi mbọdị mma, emeka na-egi mbọdị mma, emeka pụta n'ọgbọ, ụmụ ụwa wuli elu, emeka pụta n'ọgbọ, ụmụ ụwa emewe mkpọtụ, emeka na-egi mbọdị mma, emeka na-egi mbọdị mma, ndị m jeje mba, nwa njeje mba, ndị m jemanụ, Deputy Governor Imo State chiri ike, Gerald Ronna gara aga, nwoke ọma dị mma kpọrọ akpọ, Deputy Governor Owerri dịrị gị mma, Aluguda dịrị gị mma, ala Imo Steeti dịrị gị mma, ala Nigeria mara gị mma, onye jemanụ, Sir Stanley Nwamuche gara aga, onye Babamba, President Good Life Foundation chiri ike, President General, Senate Group of Companies, President General, Financial Matter Karaka, ala Owerri dịrị gị mma, ala Mbaise dịrị gị mma, ala Imo Steeti dịrị gị mma, ala Nigeria mara gị mma, onye jemanụ, Franklin na-ejishiri ike, Mebe Arabido Hotels, ABC Transport Karaka, ala Owerri dịrị gị mma, ala Mbaise dịrị gị mma, ala Imo Steeti dịrị gị mma, ala Nigeria mara gị mma, Uche Nyagocha nne m, ọ na-ebu nwoke ọma dị mma, onye hụrụ na keleli ya, ma ọ wụ gị gị na ndị otu gị, ma ọ wụ nule njiji gara iji n'ala Imo Steeti, ma ọ wụ gị gị na ndị otu gị, ma ọ wụ nule mmiri gara izo n'ala Imo Steeti, ala Owerri dịrị gị mma, ala Owerri dịrị gị mma, ala Imo Steeti dịrị gị mma, ala Nigeria mara gị mma, the chairman Orange Drugs Limited, Sir Anthony Ifeanyi Chukwu Ndubuisi na ishiri ike, Ikenga ndị chele, pride of his people, most outstanding one, Okoma mara mma, ịkpọrọ akpọ, ala Owerri dịrị gị mma, ala Ijeatọ dịrị gị mma, ala Imo Steeti dịrị gị mma, ala Nigeria mara gị mma, Honorable Chogbuagụ shiri ike, Honorable Obinna shiri ike, Jerry Labosa shiri ike, Tochukwu Okereke shiri ike, oke ahụ be shiri ike, Injinia Beninadi shiri ike, onye ọma na construction, nwoke ọma dị mma ịkara aka, onye shiwere he gbawara ni, Dejebu ịmara mma, Wokoma Jemba, Wokoma Dema Ikaraka, Wiz Popule, Ibo Felamo, Onyomana Pito, Akana Kompa, Ikaraka, Eziwa Mama, Mr. Ludiwa, Wokome Jemba, CEO Elizabeth Ventures, Ikaraka, Democracy, Merielo, Ndime Merielo. Democracy, Merielo, Ndime Merielo, Alime Gerelo, Alime Gerelo. Thank God I'm from Imo State. Emeka has come to rejuvenate. Imo State, make you jubilate, make you celebrate. Emeka Shikwen say, this one no be say them say. Emeka has come to rejuvenate. Imo State, celebrate, make you jubilate. Ala mekele His Excellency Achikudenwa. Mekele kwa His Excellency Dr. Hakim. Kemaka Right Honorable PDK. Mekele kwa Right Honorable Jones Oyereri. Ala mekele Senator Onyebuchi Mr. Empowerment. Mekele kwa Right Honorable Emeka Chinedu. Umo mimo lowali bia mezie na Alimo. Alima Adilama.
Cliffito.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. This evening, we are joined by author and paranormal investigator Keith Evans, and this last hour we've been talking about how he first came to discover the paranormal, as well as his different experiences within the Hay House. Welcome back, Keith, and thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Hello?
Yes, it's nice to be here.
You too. So, last hour we were talking about your experiences in the Hay House, and this, your direction was to write a book about this house, as well as the people that lived in and still remain there. So could you tell our listeners a bit about your book and where they can find it?
Yes. The Hayes House Ghost or People 2 is available only online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and Walmart. In any bookstore that has a online division, check with them, and they might also, it might be available for you to order. Also, you may try to go into a bookstore and order it there. And then a lot of bookstores like Barnes & Noble and Books A Million, they'll allow you to order the book, pay for it, and then they will send the book straight to your home address.
How convenient, especially during these times with, COVID and all that shenanigans going on. Some people are not going to their favorite bookstores anymore and having to do the whole online thing, or like you said, go in and order and they'll send it to your house so you don't have to go back. But that's pretty awesome. So when did you have this book published?
Gosh, I guess it was August of 2018. It was right before Hurricane Michael. So I would say August 2018.
Did you find that activity in the house changed or was amped up after the hurricane and different damages and such that might have happened?
Not really. I think in many ways, Hurricane Michael came close to the Hayes House. The Apalachicola River is to the north of the Hayes House, and then the bay is towards the east of the Hayes House. So in both directions, the water was about a block away. So, if not a half a block away. So it almost looks like the ghosts and the spirits were able to, keep the water uh, away from at least the I wouldn't say foundation, but I would say from coming on to the Hayes House property. So, and also during Hurricane Michael, I had kidney failure about 2 years prior, actually 1 year prior, and I was weak, and I felt like I'm not going to go and get out in that mess and try to find a motel room or be caught on the road while the hurricane's coming. I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And of course, there was a storm surge, and all my personal belongings were washed away. I didn't own any real property, but
Oh no.
at one point the water had come up from the ground up, almost like the water was pushed, from the hurricane saturated into the sandy soil and came up from below, and you'd hear like a bloop, and somehow the air was forced out of the room and the water would come up, say like 4 inches, and then you hear another bloop and the water would come up 2 feet. And it did that until it was actually over my head. I went into the bathroom and I was standing on top of the toilet.
Oh
And
no.
at one point it was over my head, and I was holding my breath, and I pushed off the toilet seat, and my head hit the top of the ceiling, and I opened up my mouth and got a breath of air, but the water was so high, just from not a storm surge, but just from coming up through the sandy soil, I was able to get a breath of air. And when I got the breath of air, I could feel the water lapping at my chin, and my head was, you know, top of my head was against the ceiling. And I took a breath of air, and then the bathroom door broke out, and then the back door to my apartment broke out. And when that happened, almost simultaneously, the water level went down to about maybe up to my shoulders. And then I was standing back on the toilet seat at that point in time. And I guess the storm lasted about an hour. Over that hour period of time, the water went down to the point that it was about as high as the toilet seat. But I was holding on to um, the light over the sink and to the towel rack to keep from being blown out or being washed out by the storm surge. So, and the roof was taken off, and all the walls in the apartment were knocked down except for the bathroom walls, uh, the east wall, which had the light over the bathroom sink that I was holding on to, and then the wall that had the south wall, which had the towel rack on it. So they were the only two walls that were left. But I didn't even realize that the roof had been blown off. I kept feeling something slapping me on the forehead, and it was a piece of pink insulation. And when
Oh
I looked
no.
up and I saw that, I was looking up at the gray clouds, and the roof was gone. So I didn't even realize that had happened. But when all this was happening, what I had on my mind was the fact that, the book had just been published in August of 2018, and here it was October, I think it was either October 8th or October 9th of 2018 when the storm hit. And all I could think was, if the Hayes house gets destroyed, the book won't be worth as much, because the book's worth more if people have a real house to go visit. So I was worried that, the Hayes house would be damaged or destroyed. And while all this was going on, I really I had this peaceful feeling. A lot of people say, well, wasn't that the scariest thing that ever happened to you? And it really wasn't. Of course, I realized I could have drowned, or, something could have floated by and landed on top of me. And, if I was unable to hold on to where I was, grounded to the two walls of the bathroom. But, I realized that it was dangerous. I mean, the roof could have blown off and hit me in the head. I mean, I didn't even know that the roof was gone until I looked up and saw gray clouds. But I had a sense of peacefulness. And I think I really felt that Pat and Kathleen were there with me. I'm not sure, why I thought that, but I really felt like they were there with me. And that was, really nice of them, because I don't think I felt any members of my family there with me.
Like, thanks a
So
lot,
it was
guys.
almost like Pat and Kathleen said, the book's worth more if this author stays alive. And I was thinking the book is worth more if the Hayes house doesn't get harmed. And it looked like the ghosts of spirits were looking out for me and also looking out for the Hayes house. So it just, to me, it's like most people, when I tell them I'm a paranormal investigator, the first thing they say is, what's the scariest thing that ever happened to you? And I don't look at paranormal as being scary. I look at it as like you're an explorer. You're exploring, but you're not going to another country, or you're not climbing a mountain, or you're not going to another planet, but you're communicating with someone who has passed away, which has a lot of challenges right there. But the fact that you're doing it and you're getting what I feel is intelligent responses. Everyone's got to make their own mind up as far as whether it's intelligent or residual or maybe nothing at all, But that's up to each individual person. But I find it so intriguing that I can't understand why anyone would be frightened if they get paranormal activity. It's almost, to me, like it's an honor that a ghost of spirit would take time out of their day to communicate with me, because I'm like, Mr. Average, And I almost feel like the Buck and the Hayes family and the Gibson family who have passed away are almost like friends, because you spend so much time doing paranormal research. I almost feel like I'm interviewing them and learning more about them as they learn, more about me. And it's almost like a bond forms where I want to make sure that the things they loved, like the Hayes house, are preserved and protected. And at the same time, they want to make sure that I have a long life so I can be out there talking about the Hayes house and, promoting the book, which should promote the longevity of the Hayes house in the long run. At least that's what I'm hoping. So when people look negatively towards the paranormal, I'm like hoping that I can open up their eyes to think more like intriguing, like paranormal is intriguing, paranormal is amazing. I mean, if you can communicate with a person that has passed away, to me, that's remarkable. And I think it's something worthwhile. And to find it frightening is just sad, because there's nothing frightening about it. There's
I
good
think a
and
lot
bad
of it
living
for
people,
people, yeah, and you're going to be
and
that way
there's
on the
good
other
and
side.
bad ghosts of spirits. So,
Yeah, just because you
but
die doesn't mean you're going to change automatically. You're always going to be who you always have been. And I think sometimes being on the other side, if you're stuck or something else might be happening, you could turn somewhat negative. But I think for people, it's the fear of the unknown because, a lot of us have been told this doesn't exist, this isn't happening, just go back to bed. And you start to close the curtains or the door or whatever at that point where you're not able to do it anymore and you kind of lose that little bit of magic or sense of belief.
well, I think especially children are in tune with uh, the paranormal or ghosts and spirits. And I think a lot of times the way the parents handle it uh, probably isn't good. Um, I always look at it this way. When I was a child, I always thought there was someone in my closet and or someone underneath the bed. And when I look back on it, nothing ever hurt me if there was a ghost or spirit in the closet. And, nothing ever harmed me from underneath the bed. So I spent all that time worrying about it. And I always look at it this way: if there's little kids or young adults or children who are afraid or adults who are afraid of ghosts or spirits, it's probably a guardian angel looking after them. And, if they take it that way, they can get a good night's sleep and not have all that anxiety or nervous energy. Because I remember as a child, some nights I was afraid to go to sleep because I'd swear there was like someone in my closet. And I really think that ghosts and spirits like to have their own space. And most closets are either too small or have too much in them that most people can't stand in their closet because there's no room for them to get into the closet. So I think ghosts and spirits like to have their own space. And they probably go into the closet or underneath the bed because there's not going to be a person standing there, or occupying that space. It's just logical that, it's like as a person, most people want their own bedroom or their own space to work on a hobby, or whether they're having their own little desk to type away while they're writing a book. Everyone wants their own territory to do what they like to do, whether it's a garage to work on a car or, to build a birdhouse or whatever. And I think ghosts and spirits are the same way. And I think that's the reason why they go to places like under a bed or a closet. So I don't necessarily think closets or portals or, travel spaces for ghosts to come to this location. But I do feel that ghosts and spirits are pure energy, electromagnetic energy. And I think they can travel back and forth from heaven or wherever they are at the afterlife to look after whatever they love here on earth. And I think they can do it with the speed of light. So it doesn't take them, long to travel long distances.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, the different theories, and that's what I was going to bring up to you. But then you hit on it. A lot of people say that doorways or closets, mirrors, windows, or even under the bed could be different portals or whatnot for the spirit realm to go to and fro or whatnot. But, like I said, these are theories and different people's beliefs. But it's pretty interesting to think about. But at the same time, like you're saying, they just want their space, even if it's this closet over here. How many kids have been worried about things under their bed and in their closet? I remember running and jumping onto my bed because I didn't want whatever was under there to grab my foot.
Right. And I felt the same way when I was younger. And when I run across parents that have children, I always try to talk to the children, in front of the parents and just tell them that I had that same problem. And if you think of it as that there's a guardian angel, maybe great great grandfather or great great grandmother, who's there and looking after you, and it's nothing to worry about. They should feel good about it, and feel protected, and get a good night's sleep instead of worrying. And so many times it might take me an hour or two to go to sleep. And think about that. If you have 8 hours of sleep before you have to get up and go to school, if you're wasting an hour or two a night worried about ghosts and spirits, you're going to be tired the next day, and you're not going to have a good day in school because you're sleepy, you know? So I think it would help the learning process for kids to get a good night's sleep. And I think our society is just too negative about the paranormal. And of course, there are, good and bad living and dead people. So I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I would say the vast number of human beings are good people. And that's the same way with ghosts and spirits.
Yeah, it's very true, and that's where the whole line that you use, even in the title of your book, ghosts are people too, and that's what I try to portray to my kids, because I had that same issue with trying to get to sleep. Sometimes I wouldn't sleep at all, and not only does that make you tired as a kid, but then you end up having unhealthy sleep habits, which now I'm in my early 40s and I still carry these unhealthy sleep habits. No matter how early I had to get up, my sleep schedule was still the same, like virtually impossible. But yeah, if there was a way to, listen to your kids and show them there's nothing to be afraid of, and help them not to get the same unhealthy habits, I mean, that would just really be good for them in school and as well as in their life later on. I refer to that as paranormal PTSD, is what I've always called it.
Well, I remember one time I was visiting a bed and breakfast in Apalachicola, and I think I was there for maybe 2 or 3 days at the most. And when I laid down, I really felt like someone was staring at me. And it seemed to me like, I don't know how, but I was sensing that the ghost or spirit was standing in the bathroom and looking out at me. And, it was like, almost like they despised me. And I thought, is it because I'm a paranormal investigator? So the only way I could sleep was just to shut the bathroom door. And when I shut the bathroom door, then they stopped it, even though I'm sure that a ghost or spirit could go through the bathroom door. I mean, but anyway, by shutting the bathroom door, it stopped. And the 2 or 3 nights that I stayed there, I would just shut the bathroom door, and then I went right to sleep. But when I left the bathroom door open, I mean, you know how if you have your back turned and someone's just staring at you because they like to, maybe do you harm, and you can just feel it and tell it.
Mm-hmm.
It was that way about this ghost or spirit. And that was one of the few occasions that I had that. And all I was doing was sleeping in the room. I wasn't actively doing a paranormal investigation at the time.
Yeah, and it's like maybe that spirit felt like you were invading its space, and I don't know. It was uncomfortable. It couldn't do things it generally could because you were there, and it probably felt like you do have that awareness to where it couldn't go unseen, unheard, or unfelt, or whatnot. So closing the door, I think, gave it, like you said earlier, its own space.
And it could be, ghosts are people too. Who knows? I might have looked like uh, a man who this ghost or spirit had problems with, when they were alive. And maybe they felt like somehow I was that person reincarnated, coming back maybe to do them harm. You never know what the ghost or spirit is thinking. And I guess if I'd have took the time to reason with the ghost or spirit, where I just wanted to go to sleep, and I thought, well, if you're going to keep staring at me with contempt, I'll just shut the bathroom door, which probably worked faster than trying to talk this ghost or spirit down from being angry at me, or at least having contempt for me. But anyway, that I can see where people feel that way at times, and there probably is a ghost or spirit that is, staring at you with, some type of contempt, if not, you know, wanting to do you harm. They just don't like you, or upset with you for whatever reason.
It's hard to know. So how many years altogether have you been doing this, and do you kind of keep the same way of doing things, or do you feel like you've grown and kind of changed your whole game plan around as far as paranormal investigation goes?
Well, when I was younger, like I say, when I was 4 years old, I was realizing that I was interested in things that most 4-year-olds weren't interested in. Like, I would tell my aunt in her house that, her wood was very pretty. And, I would tell her I liked this wood. She had some type of wainscoting, uh, which is like knotty pine wood with a highly glossy, I guess, shellac finishing. And it don't go all the way up. It just goes up to like chair level. And I would make over it every time I went to her house, and my parents thought that I had a problem or something. Like, why does he like that wood so much? But I could feel that at least one or two owners who had passed away was really proud of that wood. And I was picking up that sense or feeling that they had, that, when people came into their house, they were very proud that they had this beautiful decorative wainscoting wood. So I guess I learned not to say much to my family about what I was feeling about wood or farmhouses. I would just tell them that I wanted to go exploring. So I learned to say less so I wouldn't be criticized more. And then I learned not to tell anyone that I was doing paranormal investigating. Because in the 70s and 80s, the part of Maryland that I lived in was pretty conservative, and, I'm sure they would have wanted to put me in a straitjacket for doing paranormal research. And at that time, I think the only person, that I knew that was doing paranormal research was, oh gosh, what was his name? He was in the Navy. His wife's name was, I think, Nancy. I think they were from Massachusetts, or
Are you
I
talking
don't know
about
if
the
you remember.
Warrens?
Yes,
Ed and Lorraine
the
Warren.
Warrens, and then there was the guy with the German name. I think I had heard of him. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name. I have his books. His daughter re-released one of his books, I think, in 2009 or 2008.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they started, I think it's Heinrich or something like that. They started a show on that too, and they went into all of his old cases and revisited them and stuff. It was pretty
Yes, he
cool.
was the one that recorded everything. on the old reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah, I gotta look on
Yes, I
Discovery Plus. It's like Heimrich or Heim. Yeah, I think it's Heimrich or Heim. I don't know. I'll find it here in a second.
it
But
was a
yeah,
it was a German name, but I can't think of it. But they were like the only three people that I knew that was doing paranormal research. But I mean, I would have been ran out of town on a rail had I told people. But I even noticed that in the woods,
it's Holzer.
like one location that I lived, the woods towards the west, there was something about that. I can't put my finger on it, but I would always have dreams about the woods towards the west, and it was different than the other parts of the woods, and I could never really put my finger on what it was, but I I could never find out, you know, whether it was something to do with the trees, like the spirits of the trees, but it was almost like there was something about the woods. Uh, but that's all it was. I could never figure anything out. I would always take walks in the woods and kind of like look for clues, like I was going to find a cave or something. But I would actually have dreams about that part of the woods where it was almost like the woods was saying, come into the woods, like wanting me to come into the woods. But I didn't know why. Why did they want, why did the whoever want me to go into the woods? But I never did find out. I mean, it would be like a paranormal investigation where you were always searching but could never find anything out. I had a neighbor who he said that there was a very large black snake, and he said that it wasn't real. It was like supernatural black snake, and he said that he only felt that you know people of Native American background would be able to see this mythological black snake. And he his house was built on top of a root cellar, and I don't know if the root cellar was there before the house was built or what, but I had been in his root cellar, and he had told me that he had seen the snake in his root cellar, and he said it scared him really bad because you're in a confined area. But he told me he didn't think that the snake could actually bite anyone. And I had told him, you know, he had said he passed away from cancer, I guess it was about 1978. And he had told me as long as I continued to live in that part of Maryland, that I should try to look out for this, large black snake. And I always thought, well, if it's supernatural, it probably don't need me to look out for it. And one day, this is before my neighbor passed away, I looked out towards my white shed, and it looked like the white shed had been torn up from the ground. And I thought, what happened to the shed? And then I looked and I looked, and it was a big black snake laying in front of the shed. And I guess the shed was about 8 feet wide, and this black snake was wider than the shed. And um, I went out to see it, and when I got out, it was gone. And I looked around for it because I wanted to try to figure out whether the mythological black snake was actually a real black snake, and it wasn't. I couldn't find it anywhere. So, but anyway, that was the one and only time I saw it. And I told my neighbor that I had seen it. And he was happy because he thought maybe I wouldn't be able to see it know, but I was able to see it that one time. And it was almost like I thought that someone had actually damaged the shed, had, because you can see like black along the edge of the shed, but then you notice it went longer on both sides, and it was actually a snake. And I went right out because I wanted to, prove to myself one way or the other, this is a real snake, and of course, when I got there was no sign of a snake whatsoever. And I know I saw it.
So do you think this is like some sort of tulpa that's been created from the tribe that used to talk about it, or is some sort of paranormal being, or even some sort of elemental? I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
I don't know. I've spoken to several Native Americans, and they said that they had no oral history of any type of, you know, large black snake. So to this date, I haven't met anyone who, knew anything about it. It was only my one neighbor who had told me about it, and he knew, that he was ill and getting up there in age, and I didn't live in Maryland that much longer before I moved to Florida, so I wasn't around to be any type of protector of the snake. Now I thought if the snake was real, a real live black snake, then I would try my best to keep anyone from killing it, because the part of Maryland I lived in, everyone had a gun and they liked to shoot anything that was, you know, wild.
Like,
They
it's
wanted to
coming right
shoot.
at us! Bang!
They they wanted to shoot, possums, and I after I got out of the army, I just thought, killing is way overrated, and I just thought at that point in time, I didn't even kill poisonous snakes. I would pick them up with a shovel and just move them out of the yard, you know, because you get enough of death and destruction. It's way overrated. And but I kind of felt bad when I moved to Florida that I wouldn't be there to look out for this snake if it was truly, a flesh and blood snake. But if it was some type of supernatural snake, it probably, really didn't need me to look out for it. But I know I saw it that one time, and I went right outside, and then it was nowhere to be found. And I don't think a big snake could move that fast for very far.
I don't know. It's
But if
really.
anyone's listening to this program and knows anything about, the Native American tribes and what this, black snake actually means and what it meant to see it, or, I mean, I'm like maybe a quarter Native American, so I guess I'm kind of watered down when it comes to being a Native American, but I was honored with the grace of this snake making its presence known to me, where my neighbor wasn't sure whether, I would be able to see it.
Yeah, and I imagine
So,
for him, when he heard that you did see it, it made him feel better. Because imagine, thinking, am I going crazy? Did I really see this? And to have that confirmation from you, I'm sure was such a big relief.
well, he had a smile on his face, but I don't think it was because he, didn't think it was real, or he knew it was real. I don't think, well, he knew what he had saw, but he felt that it was unable to bite him because it was a supernatural snake. It wasn't a flesh and blood snake that, could bite you and do harm. But he just said when he saw it the last time, he was in his basement, and that's a confined area to see a large snake. Of course, I saw the snake. I was inside looking out the window. So I guess the snake didn't want to scare me. It just wanted to let its presence known.
Did you
But
see
I had
its
lived in
head,
that.
or did you just see the body of it?
Well, the shed was probably maybe 20, 30 feet from the window, and the shed was white, and the grass around the shed was green, and it just looked like someone had pulled the shed up from the bottom, and it looked like I was looking at a black area where there was no white shed. And then I realized it was a snake laying on the ground in front of the shed, and the black line that I saw went across the shed, and on each side was longer than the shed. So the shed was 8 feet, in length. It was a small shed, but eight 8 feet, that's a pretty long snake. And then it was at least 2 or 3 feet on each side of the shed. So that would be about 14-foot long black snake.
Anaconda.
So I've only seen one snake that long or close to that length, and it was in Florida. It was at UCF, and that snake was very skinny compared to the snake that I saw. The snake that I saw was kind of thick, like a boa constrictor. So, but the snake at UCF, there's a lot of kids that were afraid of it, and it was kind of like in the path of where they were walking. And I walked up behind the snake and I touched its tail, and it turned around, just bent its head around and looked at me, and it went ahead and went. So I figured if I could get it to go on back into the woods, the kids will not complain, and hopefully the snake will continue to live. But that snake was like skinny, probably maybe, I don't know, 4 inches in diameter at maybe the most. But the snake that I saw by my shed was much thicker and at least 14 feet, in length. So
Huge. I wonder what it's doing, what it's looking for. What is its purpose?
yeah, it would be nice if I could find some type of oral history that involved the snake, whether it was had a purpose like a guardian angel, or whether it was a protector, or whether it had a sign, what it meant to see it.
Where's that
I don't
place
know.
where there's that big snake glyph that's made out of rocks and it's really huge? Isn't that near Maryland somewhere?
Um, I've seen that on History Channel. I think that is maybe Michigan. I don't think it's in Maryland. I think it's further north. I think it's in Michigan, but you can definitely see it from the air. It's called the Serpent.
Yeah, the Serpent Mound. And I also
Yeah.
found that name we were looking for. It was Dr. Hans Holzer.
Yes, Hans Holzer. So Hans Holzer and the husband and wife team, the Warrens, were like the only people that I knew of that were doing paranormal research. And, I was doing it in such a primitive way that it was just me and my so-called empathic abilities. At the time, I didn't even know the word empathic abilities, but I just knew I had them. I didn't know what the terminology was for it, but and
Well, I think
throughout your life, you're working hard to make money, and you know, it seems like you put your paranormal thoughts and feelings on the back burner and you go on with life.
very true. Well, on that note, we do have to go to our second music break. So on this break, we have Mr. Hosny Bronx again from Jamaica, as well as the Bronx of New York with Strong Life, as well as Free Child. And then we have King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria with Rosie. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
Yeah, yeah. Babylon make you suffer. What is desire? Strong life. We are ready to fight.
Oh yeah, it's funky on the beats.
Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, cinnamon, do it softly. I said you wine your body, eat the sweetie, sweetie. Make it rock my body, I am feeling horny. Make it touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Mukomukeji, go bere muketa. Oya mukomukeji, oya bere muketa. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy kosi kosi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy tohin kosi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy and his baby, them dey for corner. Daddy begin the touch and the girl dey holla. Now daddy begin the open the shirt collar. Now something come out, daddy begin the suck am. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́ ẹjọ́. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, cinnamon, do it softly. I see the wine your body, eat the sweetie, sweetie. Make it rock my body, I am feeling horny. Make it touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Kissy, kissy, I'm money, edge. Daddy saucy, saucy, I'm money, edge. Daddy kosi, kosi, I'm money, edge. Daddy kahe kosi, I'm money, edge. Daddy contact, I'm money, edge. Daddy comfort, daddy consist, I'm money, edge. Daddy can eat, daddy 120, I'm money, edge. Daddy 18, daddy 240, I'm money, edge. Daddy 360. Daddy and the baby, them there for corner. Daddy begin the touch and the girl the holla. Daddy begin the open the shirt collar. I come to come, daddy begin the sucker. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́ ẹjọ́. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, 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 Imarama.
Oh yeah, it's funky on the beats.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight we have Mr. Keith Evans on, and he is an author as well as a paranormal investigator. Welcome back, Keith, and thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight and sharing your experiences.
Well, thanks for having me.
We were talking on break about where we would like to go from here, and we were talking a bit about the dream realm and some of the experiences that you and I have both had doing that. So would you like to tell us how that all started with you?
Well, when I was, I guess, a teenager, I was concerned about if the Vietnam War continued on. I was graduating from high school in 1976, and I thought I could possibly be drafted. But they stopped the draft in 1973, and then we ended, all involvement in Vietnam in 1975. So after that, I guess you could say usually during the summer, whenever I fell asleep and it was very hot out, it seemed like I would have dreams and I would be like on patrol and just walking in mud and very tired and, very stressed out dreams. And not just one night, but multiple nights. And, in one dream, I was a medic. That's what I was in real life and in the dream before I joined the Army. And we were like on patrol, but we were in the mountains. It was like, I guess I had always heard the term Central Highlands. It wasn't jungle. It was more like mountain terrain, but less swamps or anything like that. In some of the dreams, it would be mud and swamps. But in this one dream where I stepped on the landmine, it was up higher, like we were walking along a ridge in maybe mountain terrain. And I was in the center of the group. And then I remember, a loud explosion. And it was like just nothing but like dust or smoke. And I remember running forward and I couldn't get out of the dust or smoke. And then I remember in the dream that I was, on my back and apparently one of the soldiers was putting a tourniquet above my knee. And then I realized at that point that I had been the one that stepped on the landmine. And it was, I guess you could say, so intense that my hands shook for at least 2 or 3 days, after I woke up.
Holy crap.
I mean, and when I woke up, I was actually crying when I woke up. I think this is the first time I've talked about it, at least, on the public airwaves, but it was such an intense dream. I don't think I've ever had a dream that I was crying after I woke up. And I guess my hand shook for at least 2 or 3 days. It was kind of embarrassing because, I'd almost have to hold my hand to keep it from shaking, both hands.
It was like a form of shell shock or whatnot.
But it was a dream, but I often wondered if I had been a soldier, maybe in the French army, and the French were involved in Vietnam until what's it called? Bin Phu was like the last stand that they had where they were overrun, and that was probably in the 50s. And then after that, that's when the U.S. got involved as far as sending people to advisors to help out. And then, advisors to train the South Vietnamese troops. And then in the early 60s, and they started putting in combat units. But I often wondered if I was having like a residual remembering from a past life where I might have been a French soldier. And when I was actually in the regular army in the early 80s, there was they would have soldiers from other militaries come as guests to observe the Ranger School. I was medical support for the Ranger School. It was a TDY duty when I was a combat medical specialist. And there was a French soldier, and we were told not to talk to the soldiers. Well, it was just one soldier. We were told just leave them alone. They're there to observe. And the guy was wearing like what I would consider to be Vietnam era jungle fatigues, OD green. And I actually walked up to him and I said, isn't that the same type of fatigues that the French wore in Vietnam? And he said, yeah. So they hadn't changed their fatigues from like the mid 50s up until the early 80s. And he asked me, how did I know that? And I said, what could I say? And it was from the dream that I had, because I had the dream before I joined the army. And I had a multitude of negative dreams about, combat and the after effect of combat. And all that stopped when I joined the army. And I didn't join the army until late. I was 22 years old when I joined the army.
Wow.
And I actually turned 23 in basic training. But after that, all the nightmares stopped. Almost like someone was kind of guiding me towards the army. And I remember one night I was still trying to figure out whether I was going to join or not. And I was getting ready to go for a run, and they had said on the news that there were supposed to be like comets. And I was looking up in the sky, and I said, if I see 3 comets during this run, I was like running like 5 miles. I said, I told myself, if I see 3 comets, I'll join the army. I saw 3 comets during that run. So anyway, it was just kind of like the story that led me into joining the army. But I had all types of dreams. Like one night I dreamed that I was in all I could think of it was a tunnel. And I was crawling through, and I crawled and bumped into I guess it was a North Vietnamese soldier, VC or NVR, and they had a knife, and there was a struggle with that. And when I woke up, I was standing up in bed. So, but that wasn't as scary as the dream I had about stepping on the landmine. But when I woke up, I was actually standing in bed. And, it was I was in a tunnel because you couldn't stand up. You had to fight at
Yeah,
a
you had to
crouching
crawl.
position.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to fight in those conditions. But, and then I had another dream where I was walking with an artificial uh, leg, and I could have swore that the leg was making a screeching sound as I walked. And but anyway, in this dream, a young lady came to visit me, and I didn't know who she was. You know, it was almost like my memory was not there in the dream. You know, and it was like I was trying to remember who she was, and so that was just, you know, the type of dreams where it was like I must have had some type of head injury or brain injury because I couldn't remember who she was, and it was like she knew me, and I
I
think it
feel
was
like
like
it was,
girlfriend basis.
yeah.
Anyway, just stuff like that.
Yeah, especially
I
due to the
can't.
whole landmine thing. Like, it could have caused some brain injury or whatnot that caused you to, man, amnesia.
Yeah, because it can throw you up in the air, and who knows how you land or what you're going to land on. But I'm trying to think of. I know there was more dreams. Uh, walking in the mud, those type dreams. I just remember that as a medic, there was a lot of sick and injured civilians, and I don't remember the chain of command saying it, but I was told not to treat the sick and injured civilians, just to keep going. Like we were like moving quickly among, on a road, but we were walking, and it seemed like we were going one way and the civilians were going the opposite way. And I just felt a tremendous amount of guilt for not treating the injured and ill civilians, but they were saying, no, keep moving. We got to keep moving. So I just remember that. That was like the main part of that dream. But nothing pleasant. See if I can think of anything else.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I had a reoccurring dream, and this lasted, I think, at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, on repeat, every night, never failed. But I think it was a past life memory. I recall it's like New York or some big city like this. I'm up in the air, and I'm on this iron beam that's being supported by a crane. And I'm kind of straddling this beam, and it's moving, and at one point I stand up and I'm holding the cable, and then I start to walk across the beam, and this very big gust of wind comes and blows the iron beam, and so I fall and try to hold on to it, but then I end up falling and falling and falling, and I could see all the old cars and all the tiny people getting bigger, and everything is getting bigger and bigger and closer until right before I hit the sidewalk. And yeah, so now that's my biggest fear, is like falling to my death, and I hate that feeling of falling, because even though it is a dream, I could still feel it in my stomach and in my body. Just the way your heart kind of goes up in your throat or whatnot when you're on a roller coaster, even ever riding a roller coaster. Never rode one until I was like 13. But yeah, just that feeling of falling, and it just seemed so real. And then it just all of a sudden quit. And then it was, running from dark figures and whatever else after that. But I feel like that was some sort of memory of my past life.
Did you have more than one dream of you're falling off the beam?
It was like every night forever, it seemed like. And
same
then,
type dream over.
yeah, and each time I had it, the sidewalk would get closer and closer and closer to right before I hit the crack in the sidewalk. But I don't think I ever actually hit, but I know I got really, really close. Like my nose was touching the sidewalk in one of the very last dreams I had. And then you hear these... Yeah, then you hear these theories. If you ever hit the ground when you're falling at a height like that, you could die in your sleep. But then I hear that's also not true. So I don't know. Like I said before, different theories. But I still remember it. And I was having that at the age of, I think, between 4 and 6.
Well, maybe in a past life you were one of the guys that were up working on the beams. You know, they were putting in the metal structure for the high rises.
Yeah, that's all I could figure. But yeah, the dream realm is pretty interesting, especially when coming to past life or family members that are lost coming to visit you or whatever else may be going on. Did you remember any of your other dreams? I was trying to give you some time.
Well, for the most part, most dreams, as soon as you wake up, you don't remember them. You might wake up thinking, "Thank God I woke up," because the dream wasn't good, but you don't remember it. I can't think of any different style of dream about being in Vietnam.
Yeah, it's
I
all that
can't
whole
think.
life regression thing going on there, different stages of that life.
And it seemed like I had these dreams right before I joined the army the first time, which was when I was 22.
Well, thank you for your
So
service.
most of the dreams had to occur, I would imagine, from like 20, 21, 22. I might have had some dreams when I was maybe 13 years old, but it seemed like at that time it was probably the dreams that were more mundane, the dream that I would have of being in this long-term care facility and not being able to remember a young lady that came and cried because I couldn't remember her, and then remember walking with the artificial limb that to me made a squeaking sound that I was horribly self-conscious about.
Yeah, it kind of added insult to
Just,
injury.
but I remembered those dreams. The only other dreams that I had when I was a child was being on a bridge that would give way. I had reoccurring dreams about that. And then as a child, I was always driving a vehicle and I would come up onto, or at least close to the bridge, and then the bridge would just collapse and then I would be braking hard to try to stop. I had dreams like that. That's the only other reoccurring dream that I can remember having was the bridge collapsing. And sometimes I was actually on the bridge when it collapsed, So other than the dreams about Vietnam.
So other than
And it seemed like,
having past visions like that, did you ever have them in real time? Or did your parents ever mention you saying anything as a young child about past memories? Or were they kind of closed off to that sort of thing?
well, they were closed off. I mean, they would have probably been unhappy about that, like they were with me, like in the old decorative wood, because, I was like feeling the enjoyment that that house or that wood had brought the past, owner who had passed away. So it seemed like anything involving the empathic abilities, they wanted to shut that down. I was always interested in if a person had an old house, I would always ask them, what year was it built? Did they know the name of the first owner? It was like, why did I want to know that stuff? And most people
They're
really
like,
didn't know what year it was built.
yeah. That's pretty cute running around as a little boy. What year was this house built? That's
But
pretty
it seemed
awesome.
like it was important because I was picking up on my empathic abilities were picking up, I guess, the thoughts and the feelings of the at least deceased past owners. But I always liked old houses. I was, as a child, I wasn't sure why, but I think it was because I guess the past owners really were passionate and loved their homes, and I was picking up that same passion that they had.
Yeah, I'm picking up on those energies earlier on, and you were saying as far as being empathic, you're not as big as other people, but I think the more you use it, the stronger it'll get.
Well, in one way, as a child, it was kind of like I'd have to kind of do it undercover. Otherwise, my parents would get angry at me. But I, if I had a chance to go near an old home, I always reacted the same way. And it was almost like I felt like I was investigating something and wasn't really sure why I was investigating it. I wanting to know, who the first owner was and what year was the house built. And, but I, I sure would, it would be great to have a TV program where, how most TV programs, the paranormal investigators there to solve a problem that they're having with a ghost or spirit. It'd just be nice to have a TV program where I go to an old house and just communicate with the good and decent ghosts and spirits that are there because they choose to be there to look after the house and the present owners that are taking care of the house for them because, ghosts and spirits without a biological body, they can't really make money to make sure the house gets taken care of. So it'd be nice to do that because in most cases, I go to places that aren't really having problems. I go to places where the ghosts of spirits are so good that they're not causing anyone any grief whatsoever. And it's intriguing to talk to, decent ghosts of spirits that are what I would consider are acting like guardian angels, looking after the house that they loved when they were alive. They're still bringing as much positive energy towards keeping that house, intact and up and running the same way it was functioning when they were alive. And, it's just, it'd be nice if there was more emphasis put and emphasis put on ones that are causing problems because a lot of times when people contact me and say they're having a problem, and I say, well, what's happening? They'll say the ghost of spirit's knocking. And I said, well, did you say hello? And they say, well, why would I say hello to someone that's evil and demonic? And I say, all they're doing is knocking. Just say hello. And then they say, okay. I said hello, and the knocking stopped. And I said, it's a ghost or spirit trying to get your attention. And when you said hello, they have
You
achieved
acknowledge
their
them.
objective, getting your attention. And I don't always feel, I can't say that I know what a ghost or spirit hears or what they see or whether they can see the colors of the sunset or whether everything's in black and white like some people prize that ghosts can. I think that ghosts and spirits just want your acknowledgement, and that if they make a really loud noise, just tell them that's kind of loud. Next time, can you knock lighter? And maybe they can adjust their knock so it's not so loud that it scares you, just knock lightly or tap or whatever. But anyway, most of the people that have contacted me having problems, to me, just have not learned how to respond and deal with a ghost or spirit. And once they do, then they find out that it's not evil or negative. It's just something that they learn to live with if you're going to co-inhabit with a ghost or spirit. I find that, most ghosts or spirits just want to be recognized. It's almost like if you're walking down the street, how many people do you say hello to? But the ones you do say hello to, it's kind of a good feeling to see someone and say hello. So I think the ghosts or spirits feel the same way. If they can, recognize a person and say hello by knocking and just have a living person say, hi, I hear you. I know you're there. How are you? Or hi or hello or whatever. I think it goes a long way to stop the knocking. I'm not sure whether some ghosts or spirits have like a panic attack where they want by you, and by you not acknowledging their presence, they might just continue or use their energy to change. So, but I find that usually solves most of the loud noises that ghosts and spirits make. And I try to get people into acknowledging the ghosts on a regular basis. I remember one person was telling me that they were afraid to go into the basement because every time they went to their basement, they felt like the person was staring at them. And, I told them to say hello every time they went to their basement, just say hello. And, if you want to, try to give the ghost a name and, and just say hello.
I was about to
say
say
their
that
name.
too, and it's amazing how many times you do that, and then you either get some word from an old family member or find some piece of information, and you're like, man, his name was John, or whatever the name might be. I don't know. They're, like you said, and I've said many times before, ghosts are people too, and they just want that acknowledgement and to be, people to be aware that they are there.
I think they want, I don't want to say that they're lonely, but they want to communicate with the living. And I think that it gives them that type of gratitude to know that a living person did hear their knock and did say hello to them.
Yep, I totally agree. And sometimes ghosts can scratch you too. They might be reaching out or trying to touch you or whatever, and it's a learning process, I think, on the other side. I don't know if you've ever had an out-of-body experience. I've had two accidentally, and I didn't do so well because I'm not educated on that other realm at this point. I was trying to manipulate my physical body instead of my spiritual, but on the other side, once you die, it's not just like automatically you know what to do, where to go, and how to do things. It's kind of like school. You have to teach yourself how to move, how to make contact, and other things. So just because you get scratched doesn't mean it's a demon. It could just be a human spirit reaching out to you.
Yes, it could be that they don't realize that they're causing, a blemish on your skin. I can only remember one time being scratched, and I didn't realize it or feel it when it happened. But it was like three fingers whiffs across my chest. Maybe, it. You could see it, and it looked like maybe a sunburn. And within 15 minutes, it was gone. But it wasn't four, but it was just three. And it looked like, and I thought, well, did I scratch myself? Because when I moved to Texas, I had a lot of allergies with, tree pollen and grass pollen. And I thought, well, maybe I scratched it, just didn't realize it, so it's a possibility. But anyway, I'd say within 15 minutes it disappeared. I think a person would be hurt more if they went out and got a suntan, you know. But I
Yeah.
think
Sunburns.
now
If you're in the
I have,
military and you get a debilitating sunburn, your ass is in trouble because you just cause harm to government property, and you're disrupting the function of your job.
yeah.
It's crazy. Continue with what you were saying. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think what I was getting ready to
Oh, well, you were
say.
talking about a scratch, like you'd be better off if you got a suntan or a sunburn.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, most people get hurt worse by having a sunburn, which lasts a lot longer. But most people that I've seen who've been scratched, they show me the pictures of their scratches. It within 15 minutes they say it went away. So it that can't be all that bothersome if it goes away in 15 minutes. And I think it's a ghost or spirit just touching them. And maybe the electromagnetic energy leaves like a little abrasion, but I've never seen anyone scratched like lacerated where they were bleeding. It was just be like maybe at the worst a slight brush burn that disappears within time. So now at the Hayes house, it not a scratch on me, but I heard scratching sounds at the Hayes house. Uh, During the time that I was writing the book, and also during the time that I lived there after the book was published. And all scratching sounds were always on the east wall, exterior east wall. And I've heard them after Hurricane Michael in October of 2018. I've heard them on the third floor apartment, and that would be on the exterior east wall while I was inside. I've heard the scratching sounds um, during the when I was writing the book and staying in the den room. I've heard them, and the den room is on the back of the house, which is the east side. And I've also heard the scratching sounds on the second floor back stairway room. So anyway, it seemed like the scratching sounds were only on the east exterior.
That makes me wonder if it could
wall.
be like some sort of like rodent infestation or whatever, because the east side is generally this side that the sun comes up on, so that side of the house is going to get warm earlier and continue to be the warmest point of the house throughout the day. Could be something else, but did you guys have any sort of rodent issue going on there, or?
Not that I know of. Now, I've had at least one or two people say, well, maybe it was termites, but
Those were
to the
some
best
big
of my
termites.
knowledge, there's no problem with termites on the east side. But I mean, that scratching sound, if it was just the house settling, or, you know, if it was making that type of screeching sound, you'd almost see some type of cracking or some type of damage on the outside, you know. And the scratching sound, well, I'm trying to think. I know I was doing a paranormal short session. This was long before I started putting them on YouTube. I just started that this past May of this year. But there was one paranormal short session that I did where I caught the scratching sound. And I don't know if I still have it. Whether I was able to save it or store it, because I've had a couple different phones since then.
Yeah, and sometimes if you have the cloud or anything like that, like I have pictures from 2012 that are still there because I did have the cloud in one form or another on my phone, and the files kind of just follow you around. So hopefully you have it, but if you're anything like me, you got a big old stack of files going on. Where do you start?
See, I didn't even learn about the cloud until later. I don't think I was using it back then, but it still might be on my phone. But it was a video, so I don't know if it'd be on Facebook or not. See, at one time, Facebook was allowing short, so I would keep my videos down to like 2, 3, 4 minutes, and you could post them on Facebook. But I think now Facebook won't allow any videos at all.
Really? Holy shnikes. Yeah, that's why
The ones I put on there are always connected with YouTube now. So, but this was a couple years ago that I was putting short videos on Facebook. That'd be interesting because the scratching sound was coming in really, really good. It almost sounded like someone taking a knife and just tap, 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 tap on wood.
Wow.
And, you know, you could actually put your hand up against the exterior wall and feel it. But you couldn't tell where it was coming from.
Well, we're in the last 10 minutes of our show together, so I want to make sure that we get your book out there again and where they can find it, as well as I believe you do have a website, and then also your YouTube channel. What are the sources or links that you can give our listeners to follow up and see the different things you have done?
Well, my book, The Hayes House Ghost or People 2, is available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and Walmart. And you could always, try to go into Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and order the book in person, prepay for it, and then see if they can ship it to your home. I have a Authors Guild website. It's www.keith, middle initial is O, Evans.com. And I also have a YouTube channel, and it is called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans. And I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. So, how much time do we have left?
We have 8 minutes and 10 seconds. So I was noticing, as far as your videos go, and you're using the Ovilus, and you're also using your FLIR, or your thermal imaging camera, to try to collect different sources of evidence. Have you gotten a lot of stuff doing that? And where exactly are you at? Generally, I see you kind of in the same place at a bench.
Yes, where am I at?
Yeah, when you're doing these sessions at that particular place. Seems like I don't know, somewhere that you really like to go to communicate.
Let me see. Different places. The one place that I go to in Apalachicola is the grave site of Dr. John Gorey. And I started going there and just taking the, probably I've been going there off and on, 3 or 4 years, and just talking to Dr. John Gorey. And I started going, I guess, about maybe 2 months ago, and taking the millimeter and the Ovilus. And it seems like whenever I have the millimeter, most ghosts and spirits will play with the millimeter and not choose too many words. So I decided to go and just take the Ovilus 5B. And I was going about either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, just about every week. And it got to the point, it was like the ghosts of spirits were expecting me. So it was like they were like lined up in the shade, under the shade tree. And I would always go in early to late afternoon. So it was kind of sunny where Dr. John Gorey's tombstone is. So I would go underneath the shade tree, and I got a lot of, words on the Ovilus 5B, but it seemed like it was more than one ghost or spirit. And when that happens, you almost have to just write down all the words and then see, because say if there's 3 ghosts or spirits that are choosing words, you might have to pick, number your words 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then see if the ones match up in chronological order. And I also have noticed that sometimes ghosts will choose words, and the words make more sense if you take backwards. Take the last word, the middle word, and then the first word last. If you reverse the order of the words as they give it to you, sometimes it makes more sense. And I'm not sure why ghosts or spirits would do it that way, but so if you're using the Ovilus 4 or the Ovilus 5B, take the words in whatever way you can. Sometimes I've noticed that the middle word it makes more sense to take the middle word first, the last word, and then the first word. So sometimes you'll get words that make sense, but they won't be in the proper order.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how that happens, as well as, I've heard time is different on the other side. So does it like speed up and slow down? Does it stay the same rate the whole time? Can things get mixed up? But like you said, if you listen to the voices and you hear these different words, you can basically put together what they're trying to say. And we used to do a Ghost Box Live with Bill Hauser, and sometimes other spirits are coming through to help the other one get their message through. So there could be several voices trying to get the same message through. So it's just really a really cool experience trying to decipher or realize, what exactly is going on with all this. But I just find comfort in that there's something on the other side, and I think once energy is there, it never really goes away, and there's something more to life than just this human experience that we're having. Although ghosts are people too. It's hard to let go, I think, of that human thing.
You can't create or destroy energy. So once you pass away, your energy just is in a different form. Meaning that your soul is the energy that carries on, and your biological body dies, but your soul lives on as electromagnetic energy. And you can actually see your soul if you look at EKG, it's electrical current. It shows a electrical waveform, and also ECG of your brain shows that there's an electrical, waveform that can be monitored and documented.
Yeah, and I also saw this scientific article that came out, and after the body was dead, there was no more brain waves or anything else like that going on. There was still this little ball of energy that was like basically at the base of the skull there in the neck area, and then that left as well. But unfortunately, Keith, we are at the end of our time. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and hanging out with us, and just sharing your experiences. It's been awesome.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So if you'd like to find his book, you can find it, and it's The Hayes House. What is the title again, Keith? I'm sorry.
The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too.
Indeed they are. Find it on Amazon, just basically any little book outlet there on the internet. But thank you so much again, Keith, and I also want to thank all of our friends and listeners on We Are Paradox Media's KPNL Radio, Facebook, Twitter, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again next weekend. You guys, don't forget, we are all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. If you would like to join us on the Skype after party, look me up and send me a contact request at tessa.n.thomas30, or feel free to call on your phone at 970-335-9596. I'd like to thank our musical sponsor, Mr. Roy Washington, for providing all of the music for our show, as well as our financial sponsors and volunteers. We have Mr. Jim Morris of the Scottish Isles, Mr. Del Elson, Kevin McDougall, and Miss Mia Savage. You guys, until next time, nighty-night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you back here, same time, same place.